The cry in the ice. The frozen wastelands of planet Vareth 9 were silent except for the endless howl of wind, tearing across the glaciers like a beast's breath. The world was unkind to all life, especially to the small colony of scattered aliens who had once called it home. In the middle of this lifeless tundra, a lone human explorer trudged through the snow. His name was Eli, a field medic from the Terran Relief Corps, assigned to map the remnants of an old war zone. His scanners flickered, showing nothing but static until a faint sound reached him. At first he thought it was the wind again. But then he heard it, soft, trembling like a cry. A child's cry. Eli's breath caught. There weren't supposed to be survivors here. The last evacuation ship had left months ago. Yet the sound was unmistakable, weak, frightened, and close. Without hesitation he followed it, pushing through the snowdrifts until his boots struck something hard. He knelt and brushed the frost away. Beneath the ice he saw a small shape, a child half buried in the snow. Her skin shimmered faintly with an alien hue, translucent blue and faintly glowing beneath the frost. Her clothes were torn, her fingers curled tight against her chest, and her breath was barely visible. She was alive, but only barely. Eli didn't stop to think. He dropped his scanner, tore off his gloves, and lifted her gently from the ice. Her body was weightless, fragile, and cold beyond belief. He pressed her close to his chest, wrapping his coat around her. The child's skin burned against his from the cold, but he didn't care. "Hang on, kid," he whispered, voice shaking. "You're not dying out here." He activated the emergency beacon on his wrist, hoping his signal would reach the orbiting Terran ship. But Vareth 9's magnetic storms were infamous. Communication was almost impossible. The temperature dropped lower. Eli's visor displayed warnings, risk of frostbite, dropping body temperature, but he ignored them. He focused only on keeping the small alien alive. Her eyelids fluttered weakly, revealing faint silver eyes. She didn't speak. But a small sound left her lips, soft, broken, almost like warm. It cut through him deeper than the cold ever could. Eli carried her toward a nearby cave formation, one he'd passed earlier while surveying. Inside, he set up his portable shelter, a thin-walled bubble designed for survival emergencies. The heating core flickered to life, casting a soft orange glow against the icy walls. He wrapped the alien child in his thermal blanket and placed his own heat pack beside her. Slowly, color began to return to her skin. Her trembling lessened. He sighed in relief, exhaustion washing over him. Outside, the storm raged harder, snow pelting against the shelter walls like angry fists. He knew they'd be trapped here for hours, maybe longer. As he sat beside her, he noticed small details. The faint patterns on her skin that pulsed like veins of light, the soft rise and fall of her chest as she began to breathe normally again. He'd treated hundreds of species before, but never one like her. He reached out, brushing away a frozen tear from her cheek. "You're safe now," he murmured. The alien child stirred slightly, her tiny hand gripping his coat sleeve. She didn't know his words, but she felt the warmth in his tone. Her eyes opened again, calm now, reflecting the glow of the heater. For a moment their gazes met, a human soldier from a distant blue planet, and an alien girl who had lost everything. That single moment carried a quiet truth through the cold. Compassion didn't belong to one world alone. Eli leaned back, staring at the storm beyond the transparent shelter wall. He didn't know who she was, or what had happened to her people, but he made a silent promise to himself. He would get her to safety no matter what it took. Outside, lightning flashed over the glaciers, painting the ice in strange colors. Somewhere in the distance, a scanner drone from the alien fleet hovered, searching for signs of survivors. It would soon detect the human beacon, and what it found would change everything. Because when compassion crossed the stars, even the coldest galaxies began to thaw. The searchers arrived. The storm had not stopped, but Eli could feel the air pressure shifting outside the shelter. That meant only one thing. The scanners in orbit had detected his emergency beacon. Someone, or something, was coming. He sat beside the small alien child who now slept quietly under layers of thermal blankets. Her breathing had become steadier, her glowing skin dim but alive. Each time her small hand twitched, Eli felt relief and worry mixing inside him. She was stable for now, but she needed real medical care, and soon. He checked his communicator again, still static. No Terran signal. Only the same eerie hum that filled every empty world after war. Then suddenly his radar beeped. A faint movement outside. Not a Terran transponder signal, something else. Eli froze. He reached for his pulse rifle and carefully peered through the translucent shelter wall. Through the blur of snow and fog, faint blue lights flickered in the distance. Hovering, scanning, moving closer. The pattern was unmistakable. Alien drones. Eli's heart pounded. He remembered the rumors, survivor hunts, patrols left behind by alien forces to recover their own. If they found him here with one of their young, things could turn bad very fast. He quickly dimmed the shelter's internal light and muted all electronic beacons. The small chamber sank into a dim orange glow. The alien child stirred at the sudden quiet, her eyes half opening. "Shh," Eli whispered softly, placing a finger over his lips. "It's okay, little one. Just rest." The hum outside grew louder. He could now see the silhouettes of 2 drones through the snow. Spherical machines with glowing blue cores and long tendrils sweeping the area. Their sensors scanned the ice, searching for life signs. Eli held his breath. His suit's life support systems hummed faintly, but he couldn't turn them off without risking hypothermia. He had to stay perfectly still. The child made a small noise, a soft whimper in her sleep. Instantly, one of the drones turned toward the sound. Its sensors flared bright and a beam of light shot through the snow, scanning the cave entrance. Eli reacted fast. He grabbed a nearby thermal cloak, wrapping it tightly around them both, masking their heat signature. The drone's light flickered over the entrance for several tense seconds before slowly drifting away. Eli didn't move until the lights had completely vanished into the storm. His heart thudded painfully in his chest, but he forced himself to breathe slowly. They were safe for now. He looked down at the alien child again. She was awake now, watching him with wide, uncertain eyes. Her small fingers clutched the edge of his coat, trembling slightly. "It's all right," he said softly, keeping his voice calm and gentle. "They're gone." She didn't answer in words, but her eyes, those silver eyes, seemed to study his face, as if trying to understand who he was. Then, in a small, shaking voice, she said something. 2 words in broken English likely learned long ago from human broadcasts. "You help?" Eli nodded, smiling faintly. "Yes, I help." She blinked. Then her expression softened, a small tear freezing at the corner of her eye. That simple moment of trust felt heavier than any medal he had ever earned. Hours passed before the storm began to settle. Outside, the once white horizon now glowed faintly under the morning sun. Eli checked his gear, oxygen low, power cells at 30%. He had to move soon. He wrapped the child securely in his coat and stepped outside into the icy wind. The cold struck him instantly, biting through layers of fabric, but he pressed on. He needed to reach higher ground to re-establish signal. They walked in silence across the frozen ridge, the girl clutching his shoulder as he carried her. Every step echoed through the emptiness. And then, far ahead, he saw it, a wrecked ship half buried in the ice. Its hull was cracked open, alien markings glowing faintly across the surface. He recognized the shape. It was a rescue craft, part of a civilian fleet. Maybe her family had tried to flee. Maybe they never made it. Eli approached slowly, scanning for power signatures. Nothing. Dead for weeks, maybe months. But as he climbed into the cracked doorway, something caught his attention. A faint pulse from a nearby console. A power cell still active. He brushed the frost away and tapped his wristcom into the ship's interface. The system blinked to life with an alien logo. He couldn't read the words, but he could see one image clearly on the cracked display. A photograph-like record of several alien figures, smiling with the same glowing blue skin as the girl. Family. Eli swallowed hard. He turned toward her and whispered, "I think this was your ship." The girl's eyes widened. She touched the image on the screen, trembling, then looked back at him. A sound escaped her throat, half sob, half sigh. Eli didn't need translation. He could feel the pain in her expression, the loss written in her trembling hands. He placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "I promise," he said softly, "I'll get you home, whatever it takes." Outside, far above the clouds, something stirred in orbit. A massive alien battleship, awakening from standby mode as its scanners detected an unknown Terran signal near a lost colony. They were not alone anymore. The alien fleet's return. The faint light of dawn spread over Vareth Nine's frozen plains as Eli carried the child across the ridge. The storm had eased, but the wind still whispered like ghosts. Every step left a mark on the snow. 2 trails, one human, one small and alien. The beacon on his wrist flickered again. A signal, stronger this time. He looked up and saw thin streaks in the sky like falling stars. But he knew better. Those were ships. Rescue, he whispered at first. But then he noticed the pattern of their descent. Military formation, defensive spread, energy fields active. His relief turned to worry. No, not Terran, he muttered. Within minutes, the silence broke as distant thunder echoed from the heavens. A fleet of alien vessels pierced through the clouds, sleek and sharp like blades of light. Their blue insignias glowed faintly, matching the child's skin tone. The girl stirred in his arms. When she saw the ships, her eyes lit up. She made a weak sound, pointing toward the sky. "Your people?" Eli asked softly. She nodded, her face filled with hope. But Eli's gut twisted. If her people were searching this area, they would find the crashed ship, and him. And they might not be happy to see a human standing over one of their young. He set her down gently behind a snow ridge and activated his visor to scan the ships. The readings made his chest tighten. Those weren't rescue craft. They were security cruisers, armed, alert, scanning the surface. Eli crouched low as one of the ships hovered directly above the wrecked transport. A bright beam cut through the ice, revealing the ship's interior. Moments later, 3 smaller scout drones shot out, circling the crash site like vultures. He whispered to the girl, "Stay still." "Don't move," but she didn't understand. Her small hands gripped his sleeve tightly, fear in her eyes. The hum of engines vibrated through the ground as one of the cruisers descended lower, close enough that the snow around them began to melt. A booming voice echoed through the air, speaking in alien tongue, deep, commanding, full of authority. The child's eyes widened as she recognized the words. She said something back softly, her voice trembling. "They're calling for survivors," Eli guessed. He hesitated, then looked at her again. "You want to go?" She nodded slowly. Eli's mind raced. If he let her go, she might be safe. But if they found him here, armed human carrying one of their young, they might assume he'd harmed her. Terrans and her kind had never been allies. Still, he couldn't just hide. He made a quick decision. He lifted the child into his arms again and stepped out from behind the ridge, holding her close. As the cruiser's spotlight found him, the snow around him turned to shimmering ice. Instantly, several drones locked onto him. Warning symbols flashed across his visor, targeted, "Don't shoot." Eli shouted, raising one arm high. "She's alive." I helped her. The drones froze midair, scanning. The child struggled weakly, calling out in her language toward the ship. Her voice carried, small, clear, desperate. Then the drones backed off. The cruiser's light dimmed slightly. A moment later, a circular pod detached from the ship and landed nearby with a hiss of steam. The hatch opened and 3 tall alien soldiers stepped out, armored in reflective plates, weapons drawn. Their faces were hidden behind transparent masks that glowed faintly blue. Eli stood still, his breath visible in the cold air. One of the soldiers approached, scanning both of them. The device emitted a chime and the soldier's head tilted slightly. The alien turned toward the others and said something short, almost questioning. The child wriggled from Eli's arms and stumbled forward, weak but determined. She said a few quick words to them, her voice trembling but strong enough to echo through the thin air. The soldiers froze. Then one of them stepped forward, lowering their weapon. The alien reached out and gently touched the girl's face, scanning the glowing marks on her skin. Recognition flashed through their expression. Relief. Eli exhaled slowly. The lead soldier turned toward him now. The alien's eyes were sharp, unreadable. For a long moment, they simply stared at each other, human and alien. 2 enemies shaped by different wars standing in the middle of a silent world. Then the soldier spoke through a translator. The voice was metallic but clear. "You saved her." Eli nodded, still cautious. She was freezing. "I couldn't just leave her." The alien was silent for a moment, then lowered his weapon fully. "Our kind owes you," the voice said finally. "You showed mercy when none expected it." The child turned back toward Eli, smiling faintly, her silver eyes soft and full of light. Eli felt something shift inside him, a small warmth spreading through the cold, something like peace. But far above them, in the command vessel orbiting Vareth 9, Not everyone shared that peace. The alien commander, watching the encounter through a holographic feed, clenched his claws in frustration. "A human saved one of ours," he muttered. "This will change everything." And indeed, it would. The commander's dilemma far above the frozen planet, the alien flagship hovered in silent orbit. Its silver hull glowed faintly under the light of the distant sun. Inside, the bridge was filled with quiet tension. Officers stood in disciplined lines, their translucent skin reflecting the control panel's glow. Every eye was fixed on the central screen, which displayed the live feed from Vareth 9 below. A human holding one of their young. Commander Rael stood tall at the center of the bridge. His voice was calm, but his eyes were sharp as blades. "A Terran? Here?" he asked. "And he has one of our children?" "Yes, Commander," replied the communication officer. "Her life signs confirm. She belongs to the colony that perished during the evacuation. Somehow she survived, and the human found her." Rael stared at the image again. The human was kneeling in the snow beside the child, wrapping her in his coat. There was no aggression, no trickery, just warmth. The commander frowned. "Humans," he muttered softly. "The destroyers of our fleets, the scavengers of the void." And yet, his voice trailed off. He turned toward his advisor. "Send a retrieval team. But keep weapons ready," the advisor hesitated. "Sir, the human signal matches that of the Terran Relief Corps, a medical division. He may not be a threat." Rael's jaw tightened. "Compassion and danger often come from the same place. Proceed with caution." Down on the surface, Eli stood near the landed pod as more alien soldiers arrived. They surrounded him but kept their distance. The child remained close to his leg, refusing to let go. He didn't understand their language, but he could feel their unease. One of the soldiers pointed toward the sky, then to Eli's chest communicator. A translator device was offered to him, small, metallic, glowing faintly blue. He took it carefully. "You can understand me now?" he asked. A synthesized voice replied, "Yes, human. You are speaking to the Vareth Guardian fleet. You have our lost one." "I found her half buried in the snow," Eli said. "She was freezing. I just did what anyone should do." The alien paused before answering. "No, not anyone. Not in this galaxy." Before Eli could respond, a bright beam shot down from the clouds above. A larger transport ship descended, its engines humming deeply. As it landed, the soldiers stepped aside in unison. A tall figure emerged, Commander Rael himself. Eli felt the weight of his presence immediately. The commander's armor shimmered with lines of energy, his expression calm but unreadable. He walked forward slowly until he stood a few feet from Eli. The alien child looked up and whispered something, her tone full of emotion. Rael's expression softened for the briefest moment. He reached out, resting a clawed hand gently on her head. Then his gaze turned toward Eli. "You saved her life," Rael said through the translator. "Why?" Eli blinked at the question. "Because she needed help. Because she's a child," Rael tilted his head. "You risked your own life in a storm that kills even our kind. For a species that once fought yours?" Eli nodded slowly. "Doesn't matter. Cold doesn't care who we are. Pain doesn't ask for permission. If we can help, we should." For a long moment there was silence. Only the sound of the wind and the hum of the ship filled the air. The commander studied him, his expression shifting from suspicion to thought. "You speak strange words, human. Words my people have forgotten." The child suddenly reached up, touching Rael's hand and then pointing at Eli. Her voice was small but clear. "Warm," she said in her broken English. "Human warm." A few soldiers exchanged glances. Some even lowered their weapons. Rael looked at Eli once more. "Perhaps warmth is rarer than strength," he said quietly. Then he gave a signal. "Bring them aboard." Eli frowned. Where are you taking us?" "To our ship," the commander replied. "You will be treated as a guest. For now." Eli hesitated, unsure if guest meant prisoner, but he could see the sincerity, or at least curiosity, in Rael's eyes. He looked down at the child, who gave a small nod of reassurance. With a deep breath, he stepped toward the transport ramp. The doors closed behind him with a hiss, sealing out the cold world. Inside, the light was softer, warmer, the air humming with alien energy. As they ascended back into orbit, Eli looked through the window and saw Vareth 9 growing smaller beneath them. He had arrived on that frozen planet alone. But he was leaving it having saved a life and started something no one expected. Far behind him, the Terran Relief Corps ship had finally picked up his weak signal. A rescue team was on its way. They would soon discover he had been taken aboard an alien warship. And when two worlds that had always feared each other finally met through one act of kindness, neither would ever be the same again. The Promise Between Stars. Alien flagship's corridors were quiet and glowing faintly blue. Eli followed two guards through winding halls that felt alive, walls pulsing softly with light as though the ship itself breathed. Every few meters, alien crew members paused to stare at him. A human among them was unheard of. Some looked cautious, others simply curious. The small alien child walked beside him now, holding his hand tightly. Her silver eyes glimmered with calm trust. Eli could feel the faint warmth of her skin, a reminder that she was alive because of a moment's choice on a frozen world. Commander Rail led them to a large chamber filled with floating holograms and star maps. It was the ship's command center. As Rail stepped forward, everyone bowed slightly. The commander turned toward Eli, his voice steady through the translator. "You are inside the heart of the Vareth Guardian fleet, human," Rail said. "Few of your kind have ever stood here without a weapon." Eli nodded quietly. "I'm not here to fight." Rail studied him for a long moment. "No, you're here because compassion still exists among your kind, and because this child lives to prove it." The little girl stood closer to Rail now, looking up at him with soft eyes. She said something in her native tongue, her voice small but determined. Rail listened, then exhaled slowly. "She says you are her protector," the commander translated. "That you are her warm star." Eli felt his throat tighten. "I just did what was right," he said. Rail gave a faint smile, something that seemed rare for his species. "Perhaps, but your act may start something far greater." He turned toward the gathered officers. "Our histories are built on fear. We fought the Terrans because we believed them merciless, yet one of them saved one of ours. Let this be recorded." The crew exchanged uneasy glances. Some murmured among themselves, clearly unsure. Eli felt the tension, the quiet disbelief. He was a living contradiction to everything they'd been told. Suddenly, the ship's alarm pulsed red. A voice shouted something sharp in alien speech. The translator flared. "Terran ship approaching. Identification, Relief Corps medical frigate unarmed." Eli's heart skipped. His people had found him. The commander's expression hardened. "They come for you," he said. "And they will not trust us." Eli stepped forward. "Let me speak to them. If they see me alive, they won't attack." Rail considered for a long moment, then nodded. "You will speak. But remember, one wrong word, and this peace dies before it begins." Minutes later, Eli stood on the ship's bridge, facing a holographic feed of the Terran frigate hovering nearby. Static filled the air before a human officer's voice came through. "Lieutenant Eli, we received your distress signal. What's your status? Are you under threat?" Eli took a deep breath. "Negative, sir. I'm safe. I was rescued by the Vareth fleet." There was silence on the other end. "Repeat that?" "I said they rescued me," Eli replied firmly. "They found me with a survivor, a child from their colony. She's alive because of them, and I'm alive because we worked together." The comm channel filled with muffled voices, confusion, disbelief. Finally, the human officer spoke again. "Do you realize what you're saying, Lieutenant?" "They were enemies of the Alliance." Eli's voice was calm but strong. "Not today. Not anymore. The war doesn't have to keep living if we don't feed it." On the alien bridge, Rail watched silently, his expression unreadable. The child stood near Eli, her small hand clutching his coat. When she looked up at him, Eli saw hope, the kind that could melt even the oldest hatred. The Terran officer finally spoke again, his tone softer. "Understood, Lieutenant. We'll hold position and await further instructions." The hologram faded, leaving the bridge in silence. Rail approached him slowly. "You could have called them to attack us," he said quietly. "You didn't," Eli smiled faintly. "You could have shot me on sight." "You didn't." For the first time, Rail laughed, a quiet, strange sound that echoed gently across the metallic walls. "Perhaps this galaxy is not as cold as we believed." He looked down at the child, then back at Eli. "She will be cared for. But if you wish, you may visit her again. Not as enemy or savior. As friend." Eli's eyes softened. I'd like that. As he turned to leave, the child ran up and hugged him tightly. Her small voice whispered through the translator, "Warmstar, come back." He knelt, placing a hand over her shoulder. "Always," he said softly. When Eli finally stepped aboard the Terran frigate hours later, he looked back once through the viewport. The alien fleet remained in the distance, no longer as foes, but as silent guardians of something new. A bond had been born on the ice, not through power, not through conquest, but through a single act of compassion that reached across stars. As the ship drifted away into the dark of space, Eli whispered to himself, "Sometimes the smallest kindness can rewrite the fate of galaxies." And far behind, in the quiet bridge of the alien flagship, Commander Rail watched the departing Terran vessel. He placed a hand over the console, whispering softly in his own tongue, words that needed no translation. "The human's warmth shall not be forgotten."